It seems about right. Bear in mind, it stops at the end of 2021. So this is pre-pandemic. I mean, food prices have been messed up by the pandemic. Sunflower oil is going up, grain is going up, lots of things are getting more scarce. Or the very hot summer, so potatoes are pricier. Bird flu, that's costing a rise in prices for chickens and turkeys. But, yes, it's the old Brexit love affair with red tape. I mean, Brexit equals red tape. More forms to fill in. OK for supermarkets, they can pay a super-duper form filler online, but for lots and lots of the lovely shops we go to that import things from Europe, that means forms.
Now, I'm not denying, as a Brexit voter, I must admit that. I have some skin in the game, as it were. I must say that, now I've had a little look at this data that they've used, and this was a report that was actually published back in April as well, and has sort of reappeared in the press this week, that actually food price inflation between December 2019 and December 2021 was 2.9% in the UK, and that was lower than in the euro area, where it was 4.5%. I would query whether they know that inflation in food prices in the UK has been down to non-tariff barriers brought on by Brexit, or whether it's just total guesswork that's impossible to tell, considering the fact that we've gone through such circumstances with the pandemic, energy prices and whatnot.
Well, that's perfectly fair, but you're the LSE graduate, Emily, not me. I mean, I couldn't even write up my expenses correctly. So you could have an
I would hazard a guess that it has an agenda.
I don't think so. I mean, their job is challenged by everybody. When Mark Carney, for example, said something about Britain is poorer than Germany, a very well-known economist, Professor Portes of King's College, jumped down his throat and sort of monstered him and destroyed him. But Portes is a great pro-European, but here he is trashing a man who was sort of advancing the Brexit case. No, I mean, we've got even problems right now. There's a report again this week that the government has imported several 100,000, 2,000 Indonesian workers all the way from Indonesia. Cost $4,500 a head to bring them here. Why? To pick vegetables and fruit and prepare it, because you won't find a Brit doing that job.
But isn't that something we need to address? I think most people, so we've got a People's poll that we're going to be coming to later. The majority of people think that immigration is too high to this country, particularly off the back of those astonishing net migration figures. And I think a lot of people are thinking, you know what? We need to start focusing on the people who are here. And if people aren't doing these jobs, well, perhaps they should.
That would be wonderful, but we've never, ever, throughout British history, or probably back into the 18th century or something, it used to be, forgive me, many people from Ireland who would come and do all of this work. And then, you know, when I was a younger man, before you were born, it was people from Pakistan or Bangladesh. And all of them go up the pay scale. They go to the LSE, they get professional jobs, do very well, like Rishi Sunak or Suella Braverman or Sajid Javid, and their children don't go into the fields again. So, but we've got the opportunity, if we want to take it, we don't want to take it, don't take it, but it'll be more expensive, to help ourselves to some of that poorer European labour market pool. You're not going to get a very small horticultural farmer just producing cucumbers or leeks to pay £20 an hour to get them dug out of the ground. It's QED, and this is where really that part of Brexit, you know, we voted to leave the treaty, that's fair enough, it's just we're cutting our own throats.
Away from the free movement argument, which, of course, there are many pros and cons of such a policy, and lots of people do lament losing free movement as one of the conditions of Brexit. But I think a lot of people get annoyed that there doesn't seem to be a lot of perspective from some of the most ardent Remainers who continue to fight the last battles. Because if you look at Germany, for example, their food inflation is running at about 20%, which is quite a bit higher than it is in this country. Now, that can't be because of Brexit. I don't believe Germany gets much of its food from Britain, so they won't be impacted by those non-tariff barriers. So, you know, I think when we look at Britain, we always seem to talk it down rather than talk about the opportunities that we do have.
Emily, 20%, that seems to me to be very, very high. I haven't been in Germany for... No, I'm not disputing your figure at all, but just as you were disputing the LSE report, the LSE graduate, ich spreche sehr gut Deutsch, ich kenne Deutschland, I know Germany. I'm was in Paris last week. I'm going to Brussels this coming week, and I always I always go into supermarkets usually to buy, one or two little things you can't get so easily or cheaply here. And yes, I notice food price inflation.
Yeah,
nobody is denying that at all. But actually, the problem really is that nobody, if I may put it, your side of the family or the camp or the LSE Graduate Association, none of you are defending Brexit anymore. I'm not. I didn't know anything about this food thing until I read about it in the papers.
I'm defending Brexit.
Well, you are.
What Brexit has achieved is to show is essentially that our domestic government can no longer be off the hook and blame Brussels for anything that goes wrong in our country, which I think is a good thing.
That is true.
Hold
but
them to account.
We were told that Brexit would cut inflation. It's just had the biggest.
Well, hang on, that's unfair.
Well, I'm sorry. I don't want to fight 2016. I'm thinking of 2026, when there'll be a review of the current withdrawal treaty, the Trade and Cooperation Treaty. I think there's a fair chance there'll be a new government. I don't know. I'm a Labour guy, but, believe me, I never count
It's looking that way.
Until they're cast. Now, that may be. Right now, the CBI, the British Chamber of Commerce, they're all moaning. It's a low-level permanent whine, isn't it? But they don't want to attack their friends. Most of them are naturally more conservative-leaning, and I hope Mr Sunak will be a much better Prime Minister than his two predecessors. But I think when there's a Labour government in, I think all bets will be off. And I think you'll find business, the British Chamber of Commerce, and the Daily Mail and the Sun blaming Sir Keir Starmer as Prime Minister when food prices go up and people can't travel. And suddenly people will say, oh, well, Brexit, well, that happened 10 years ago, in a different decade. And Britain will move on.
But this is where Keir Starmer, now I don't wish to be rude, but perhaps is ever so slightly duplicitous, because we all remember Keir Starmer, or at least most of us will remember, most of our viewers, I'm sure, will remember that he was very much a champion of a second referendum. He did want to thwart the result. He would have liked the result very much to have been different, and he made that clear, and he thought that the British people should have another go at it, voting.
OK.
That's to say, I would hazard a guess that if he, like the LSE have done with this report, that he will attempt to bring Britain very much closer to the European Union, if not back to some kind of...
My goodness, you're not reading anything he says, or you're not reading my inbox from pro-Europeans who are furious with Sir Keir, saying he's no different from Boris Johnson. He's saying keep saying it. I mean, keep saying it. Rishi Sunak never wants to mention Europe because he never wants to answer a question on Europe. We understand that. But Sir Keir pops up almost every occasion to say, no free movement, no single market, no customs union, you all have to go away and sort out all these problems. And I think on the contrary now, sure, there was a Labour Party policy at the time. I argued in The Guardian against putting all the eggs in the second referendum basket. Why, Emily? Because I think if there had been a second referendum 2 years ago or last year, the British people would have voted the same way. They don't like being taken for granted. But, I've got no influence over Labour Party policy. That was Jeremy Corbyn policy. And the one thing we know, I mean, I don't know if Mr Corbyn's still even in the Labour Party. He's been stopped from standing as a candidate by Sir Keir Starmer. I mean, you should read the complaints by Michael Crick, the very famous political reporter. He is going cross on Twitter, saying Starmer is a Stalinist. He's stopping all the left wing from standing.
But I just think, we look at the European Union, and a lot of commentators over here in Britain like to say that we're in a uniquely terrible position when it comes to a lot of things, whether it comes to our economy in general, whether it comes to attitudes in this country, whether it comes to trade, etc., inflation and whatnot. And it just doesn't stand up to the evidence. If you actually look at the data, I mean, I just mentioned that food inflation in Germany is much higher. We talk about how inflation is going up. We talk about how the energy crisis is impacting countries. Germany was reliant 45% the other day on coal for its electricity generation. It's not all sunny uplands, is it, in the EU, but it could very well be for us as a free trading nation around the world.
Well, look, I mean, For my pains, I spent 15 years before I became an MP. I had to go into exile when your heroine, which might be your heroine, Margaret Thatcher, was elected.
I have no heroines.
I had to leave the country, so I worked in Switzerland, Germany, and France, learnt the languages, and I couldn't agree with you more. I've written 4 books on Brexit, and all of them insist Europe, and even talking about the EU is daft. There's France, there's the Netherlands, there's Spain, there's Germany, there's Sweden, there's Greece. Countries are completely different one from the other. There's no homogenous EU out there. Now, the fact is that our electric vehicle production now is being transferred out of this country. Our British Volt battery super factory won't be built. The Paris Bourse, that's the Paris Stock Exchange, now is more valuable than the London Stock Exchange. This is small stuff.
Well, actually, I would also query that, but we're going to have to move on. Thank you very much for taking such a nice section of your day out for GB News.
Pleasure.
And thank you very much for joining us. We won't agree on Brexit. And please, can you tell the Remainers on Twitter to stop being so nasty? They really can be, you know. They have a little troop and they bully people like me.
Well, I'm too old to be bullied, but you should see the stuff I get from.
Well, I get very nasty stuff, but I wouldn't blame it on misogyny, of course. Of course, I wouldn't play the gender card.